Okay, we're going to install a trailer hitch on a 2024 Acura ZDX. The tools that I've needed for this are just a T15 screwdriver and a 7mm wrench. And down underneath, you have to start by removing this panel. And there's a series of T15 screws that go around the perimeter of this underside panel. And then there are four of the 7mm head screws that are up in here. Plus there's one of these kind of standard, there's two of these standard retaining clips that you find on most cars. So we've removed all those, and then we'll remove this panel. So one thing to note about the Acura ZDX is that it is built on the GM Ultium EV platform, which is the same battery platform as the Cadillac Lyriq and the Chevy Blazer, and I think one of their other Chevy Equinox or one of the other EVs that they built. And the ZDX is built in a Tennessee plant where they build a lot of these GMs, but it's got an Acura design, so there are some similarities interior. I've been really happy with. I've had the car for a month, or the crossover, whatever you want to call it, and it has a 3,500 pound tow rating. This is the standard package. This is not the S type that has a I guess that's about a 500 horsepower, and this one is 490, not much different. There's some added features on the S, but I believe both of them have a 3,500 tow rating, and I have a smaller 18-foot boat that I tow. But when you go to find towing parts for this car, it's a bit challenging. They've only made this car for 2 years, then Acura discontinued it for whatever reason. They didn't market it very well. I think I got a heck of a deal on it. I think it's a great car so far. Really, really nice to drive. But anyway, when I searched for the trailer hitch, it is a little bit misleading. There's some information on some Facebook forums, but I bought the Cadillac Lyriq hitch, and it is there's a couple brands, but this is the Curt brand. And this one is number 13617, if you need that number. And then the other thing, you can't really find a wiring harness. There were some Honda wiring harnesses. This actually, I forgot to mention, this is also the Prologue, Honda Prologue platform. But the wiring harnesses, when I started searching them, I found Prologue harnesses. And what I found was they had the same part number as the GM wiring harnesses for the Blazer. So that led me to believe that it uses the same harness. And I was able to find this harness. So the Prologue harness was, around $100 on a lot of Acura sites and Honda sites. I found this one on eBay for 12 bucks. Looks like it had been opened but never used. So saved myself a heck of a lot of money. And looking at the plug, it's just a simple plug. So I was very, you got the part for the trailer. I was really hopeful that this was going to be an easy connection. I've hooked up trailer hitches previously on other vehicles I've owned. And the wiring harness can sometimes be a challenge. You got to make connections on both sides. You got to get behind panels where your brake lights are, things like that. Kind of a pain in the neck. So seeing this simple wiring harness, I was fairly optimistic. And I just pulled the bottom panel off of the car here. And looking around, I found, I'm not sure what this is yet. I have done zero research on this car because it's new to me. But what I found was right here is a little connector, and I was hopeful that it had the same pins, this 4-pin connector, just kind of sitting there, not connected to anything. I just looked at that GM wiring harness, and it is also a 4-pin. So I am guessing that that is for the wiring harness for a trailer. And that really makes me happy because it's going to be a super simple setup. The panel that I removed right here has a hole right there, and I believe that is where the harness, the wiring harness is going to go through and come out where you can hook it up to your trailer. So I think this installation is going to be fairly simple. Fingers crossed. We'll find out. So here is the Curt trailer hitch. And as I mentioned, when you search for these online for an Acura ZDX, you are going to have some challenges. You'll go to some sites and it'll say, does not fit your vehicle. I'm thinking that because this is such a newer car, that's going to change over time. But there was a forum that I found on Facebook for the ZDX, and the guy had bought a Cadillac Lyriq, and it fit perfectly. And looking at the images of these between the brands, they're all the same. I'm pretty sure, even though if it does say it doesn't fit an Acura ZDX, if you get the Cadillac Lyriq or the Chevy Blazer hitch or the Honda Prologue even, I have to double check on that. I'm not 100% sure, but it's all the same hitch. And the biggest challenge of this install is with the bolts. So you have this bolt configuration, and this goes up in the frame of the car. And the way that you have to get it in there is you have to use these fish wires that came with it. And how I think you do it is you put the bolt down through there and you fish the wire up first, and then you put the bolt on, and then you pull the bolt. You pull this bolt and this locking mechanism. You pull it back through, and then you'll be able to, these will be just suspended hanging there, and then you'll be able to, you know, put the harness up and bolt it on. And then the second thing that's going to be the biggest challenge is you have to cut the panel. So this panel, it has to accept these arms right here. And they give you some measurements on the Curt website, as well as some instructions in the box that you have to measure, and you have to cut slots for these arms to slide through in this plastic. So there's a bit of precision that has to be done with that, and I'll tackle that when I get to that stage. But the first step is getting this on, and we'll do that next. So what you do with these, or at least the direction shows, you can see the locking part is for that, I guess these are called carriage bolts. It holds the head in place, so when you tighten it, it doesn't twist, and this will lock inside the frame. And what you do with this is you just twist it on the threads. It just screws right on. It's kind of an interesting setup. I'm trying to do this with one hand, so sorry for the camera shake, but anyway, it does just screw on there. Now I've already run into a problem. This is the this is the locking mechanism that goes in the frame, and you get under the car, and this is where, that's a bolt hole, and that's the other bolt hole. But then this is the center part where the bolts are the bolt and this lock is supposed to go through, I believe. I gotta double check that though. It might actually go on the outside, but I think it goes on the inside. But anyway, it doesn't fit. So I'm gonna double check that, and I may have to grind the edges of these down. It almost fits, but not quite. So I gotta double check on that. So what I had to do to make this fit through the hole was I had to grind the sides down. It doesn't really look like it did anything, but both sides had a little flare. They were kind of like cut at an angle. So I have a bench grinder in my basement, and I went, and you can see a little bit of grinding there, but didn't have to do a lot, but now it fits. So I went to fish it through, and what I found was the head, this round head, it was round, also did not fit. It just was slightly bigger than the hole. Same situation as that piece. So what I did was I ground just two little flat sides parallel with the underside, the square part there that goes through the hole, to see if that fit, and it does fit. But as you can see, when I was cleaning up the burrs, it takes some of that coating off, and that is a protective coating for corrosion. And I'm a little concerned with that too, because I ground it. And we don't, you know, these cars, you'll drive them for whatever, 200,000 miles. And, you know, I'm here in the mid-Atlantic, so it's salty roads in the winter, and that, you don't want that to corrode. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna probably paint the top of that with some Rust-Oleum, and I might paint that as well before I put them in. But at least now they fit. So that's a modification you might have to do on your vehicle. I can't say that the holes are going to be all the same in all these different models if they use the exact same frame. And also, it could be just, you know, Curt's hardware is slightly off of the holes that are on the vehicle. If you have another, one of the other like Draw-Tite brand, maybe their hardware fits. It just depends on your situation. So as mentioned, I decided to treat these because some of the coating I ground off. I just happen to have this Rust-Oleum can of cold galvanizing compound, and sprayed that on there. I'll let that dry, and then I'll fish them through. I just wanted to show with these spacers, I was talking about how they were cut at an angle. If you can see both sides, there's a little bit of a flare out at the top, and that's what I'm grinding off. You really just have to take that off and it'll fit through that hole. But I'm doing that on all 4 of them. There's 4 bolts in total and 4 of these holders, and I'm gonna do the little edges on the bolts and also grind these little flares off these spacers on all these, and then paint them with that compound. Okay, so ready to fish one of these through. And the setup you got to do is you take the fish wire and you put a bend on it so you can get it kind of a U around the holes. You'll see in a minute what I mean. But you fish the wire through the hole on the locking washer, and then you screw the bolt onto those threads at the end of the wire, and it fits on there nicely. And when you put this through these holes, you have to do each piece one at a time. Don't try to pull the bolt and its lock washer through at the same time. It won't fit. So you'll see what I mean. I'm gonna try to do this with one hand. I don't know if I'll be able to, but so you put the wire through and grab it and pull it through. And then what you'll do is you put these through one at a time. So this one goes through and into the hole. A little snug, but it's going. And you can see that it lines up there. And then you pull the bolt through. And hopefully this will fit. I may need to turn the video off. I put those cuts on the side, but I'm gonna have to pull this out and kind of go a little bit more vertical. And hopefully I can get these through. There it is. So not super easy, but there it is. And it came through the hole. So now you have to do those on the other hole here, and then on the other side, there's 2 more. But that's how you get those through, and it worked. So I have all 4 bolts installed through the holes. What I decided to do is leave the guide wires on those bolts. And the reason why I did that was because when I lift up the trailer hitch up to the bolts, there's always a chance that I could push the bolt back through the hole, and then it would be really hard to get a hold of. So what I did was I took the wires and I put them down through the harness holes, and I'll just lift up the harness and put the nuts on when I get up there, and then I'll probably put the screws through the holes, and then I'll unscrew it and try to get the nuts on there. But it's just kind of to protect the bolts from going up into the frame. So we've got the hitch installed now with the bolts just hand tightened, and I am going to now torque them to 90 foot-pounds. The instruction manual says they're 1/2-inch bolts, which I thought was crazy because they're large bolts. And I'm using a 19mm deep socket for those bolts, so disregard what the instructions say because there's no way those are 1/2-inch bolts. So I showed you the plug earlier. I was able to, there's a little holder holding the wire up there, and I was able to unhook it from that and drop it down. And what you saw on one of the earlier in the video was this was the end, and I thought these were the terminals, but actually this is a end of a wire that I guess you could wire to these. I don't even know, but it was basically like in just a cap that they had on there that you could probably attach wires to. And it's the same identical end as the one that comes with the wire harness. So I'm almost like 99% sure that this is for the trailer wiring, especially because those wires coming out of the car are trailer wire colors. Usually have a yellow, green, brown, and white on most standard trailer wiring. So I'm like 99% sure that's what this is for. So I'm going to hook this up and then get the wire back up in there. Okay, so I have cut the slots in the panel for the bars that go up mounted to the underside of the car. You have to cut those channels in or the panel won't go back on. The measurements that they gave me were a little off, I would say. They said that these need to be 7.5 inches deep. These are 5, and I think 5 is going to be enough. If not, I will correct that. But and the width on them is give or take an inch. With what they came with the directions, it said 39 or 38.5 or something like that, 38 7/8, and it was probably a little bit shy of that. And so you really have, this is probably one of the hardest parts of the whole installation, is getting these slots lined up, because you don't really want to mangle this plastic underside. It probably costs a fortune to replace with like most car parts. And that hole, which I'm going to fish the wiring harness through, is slightly too small for the connector to fish up through. So I'm going to grind that just a slightly bigger and use that as the hole to put the wiring harness through. And then I'm going to put the bolts on, and that will be the end. So here is the hitch installed. I put the cover back on. Fits nicely, everything went on well. I don't have the trailer hooked up, but I do have the wire hooked up. Testing it out. Turn signals on. It works. Stay tuned for a follow-up video on towing a boat with an Acura ZDX, and we'll get some real-world towing numbers. Thanks.